All right, my next project. I picked up this, it's a 1981 Alumicraft F14. Picked it up 2 weeks ago. That's irrelevant. Boat, trailer, motor. Drove hour and a half to go pick it up. Wheeled it out of the guy's garage and watched one of the tires literally fall off the trailer. Because apparently he had been using it minimally. I think he only took it out twice since he's owned it. First time boat owner who knows absolutely zero about anything boats. But apparently he'd been using it with literally no bearings left in the hubs. So I worked out a deal with him and went and bought a new set of hubs and put them on in his garage and towed it home, and here it is. I bought this thing only because the motor that was on it is a complete Frankenstein motor, and out of sheer morbid curiosity I had to go buy the thing just to figure out what this motor was. It looks like a late 70s, early 80s, Johnson 25 horse tiller, which it is. But when I asked the guy to give me a shot of the serial tag on it, which he did, I don't know if this is going to show up. So it says FD10. That's all fine and dandy if this was like a 1956 10 horse tiller. Because that transom clamp is from a mid-50s something. Serial number claims it's a 10 horse. And the original color on the inside is red, which they were. If you know the old 50s Johnsons, they were red. So, further digging, I repainted it. The whole thing was painted duck boat, and it looks like they used about a 3-inch nap roller while on crack. So I sanded this thing down until I lost my ambition and threw a white coat of paint on it, and seeing as it's never going to be an original motor anyway, did some snazzier looking decals. So in further inspection, it's got a late 80s Evinrude lower end on it, which the good and bad about dedicated duck boats, they only get used a couple times a year, but typically they beat the hell out of them those couple times they use them. So later model Evinrude lower end. So then I start poking around because the freeze plug, or whatever the outboard community calls a freeze plug, from the factory, focus, has a serial number, the same serial number that would be on the motor, on the tab over there, the plate. When they come from the factory, that freeze plug should have the same serial number stamped into it that would be on that tag. So we've got a 50 series transom clamp on what was a 25 horse Johnson with a newer, still old, but newer Evinrude lower end with a factory power pack on it, the motor assembly. Now, check me if I'm wrong. When Evinrude remans or sells replacement power heads, they don't have a serial number to stamp into this because it's not going with a dedicated body. So that freeze plug is unstamped. So, to my best guess, this is a reman OMC power head. Now, this block is the same block that's used on the 25s, the 2025, 28, they're always the 35s, the same block. The only difference is the carburetor and or intake, depending on what configuration you're going to. Now, if you notice here, neither the carb nor the intake really match the crank casing. So I don't know what configuration this carb or intake is. The thing's got over 140 pounds compression on both holes. It's got electric start. That's an aftermarket setup because there's no rectifier or any of the other parts under the flywheel for the electric start. So it's literally just the electric start motor, bracketry, cabling, which is fine. But I'm not sure what horsepower configuration this carbon intake is. I haven't pulled that off yet to start mic and stuff to figure it out. If I even care. I'm not sure if I do. But for all practical purposes, Frankenmotor here seems to be in fantastic mechanical condition. I haven't started it yet. I just got the lower end buttoned back up today. Put a water pump in the lower end, which it needed. It wasn't destroyed. The fins were still intact, but it was in dire need. The plugs look good on it. When I got the thing, I don't know if the guy I bought it from was playing around with linkages and timing and all the settings in here that you really shouldn't be touching unless you know what the hell you're doing. But literally every screw that could be turned was turned for no reason that I can justify. I set the timing under cranking at about 29 degrees, which will give you about 35 degrees wide open throttle when running. The timing was, it was like 15 degrees, so it was just completely way off, which is this screw here, if you don't know. The override, once you come off your timing cam for the throttle butterfly, long story short, the thing had half the timing it was supposed to have, and in wide open throttle, he was only getting less than half throttle. And he was telling me how great this motor is, and it's the greatest thing ever, and it idles so nice, and just fine. I'm sure it did with no timing. Yeah, so everything is set to where it's supposed to be. I haven't fired it yet. Like I said, I need to pull this flywheel off. I want to replace upper crankshaft seal. I'm not sure if it needs one, but if you can see that greasy mess in there, that's typically what that means. Now, it's not slung all over the inside of the hood, which is what happens when the upper crank seal goes bad. It'll sling oil out of here and you'll have a ring on the inside of your hood. None of that. And this could just be from him spraying penetrating oil in here. Because the grease in here, like all the old wild parts get, the grease in the handle is all solidified and super stiff. I pulled it all apart and lubed everything, and everything works buttery smooth again. So that oil might just be from him spraying everything down in an attempt to free up the linkage. But upper crank seal is only $12, and if I keep this motor, I'll know it's been done. I won't have to worry about it. So, Frankenmotor, which is really why I bought this boat, because I could not for the life of me figure out why it's got an FD10 model number stamped on the transom clamp when this clearly is not a 1950s 10 horse Johnson. So the mystery continues. Feel free to comment below if you have any input on this, but yeah, like I said, first glance it's a late 70s, early, and I'm assuming it's a 79 as it's got the Spark Advanced tab that literally says it's, at least the airbox is a 79. And I just sold, I had an 1980 Johnson Tiller, 25 horse, that had the correct tag on it, and it's the same everything. It's identical motor. I just don't know what horsepower configuration that carbon intake is. I obviously know it's the 25 up to 35 block. Yeah, we'll see. So, that also came with this boat and trailer. Alumicraft F14. Alumicraft's always built a decent boat in my mind. And this trailer is a little dude, circa 1968. It also was painted with a mop to match the boat. I gave it a quick sanding down, threw a coat of paint on it. The little dudes had the swivel tilt trailer set up here. The tab had been busted. So I towed this thing home for 2 hours. I also replaced this. Well, when in fact, the old one's laying over here. Yeah. So that's the kind of, yeah. Anyway, I got the thing home after towing her home for 2 hours. And I loosened the winch, pulled the clamp off, and the thing tilted. Because the tab in there for the tilt system was broke. The safety chain was probably been gone for about 3 decades. And that's how the guy had been using it. So we ixnayed the whole tilt system. I welded that up, threw a coat of paint on here, replaced the winch. I put new safety chains on it because the ones that are on there look like it used to be a dog collar. New coupler. The old jack still works good. All the lights work. New wheels, new hubs, bearings, bearing buddies. For a 68 trailer, the thing's in great shape. And unless you're dumping them in salt water, they don't get used in the winter. So take even the slightest amount of care of a boat trail and it'll last you. And then we come to the boat. It's pretty much been unmolested thus far, sans some rod holders. And apparently he had a snap-on cover at one point because there's snaps running around the boat. Not a big deal. The F14s had these little cubbies back here on both sides that didn't have a lid. They were just stuck with foam in them. The transom on this thing was just absolutely wasted. Physically in one piece still, but I mean, there's literally nothing left of it. So I ripped all that out. It's got the splash well, it goes in there. Started cleaning up the transom. I gotta believe this is the factory wood still, given the way it's got the taper cuts on the end. And pretty sure it was, I'm not sure if that's pressure treated or not. I was afraid that it was going to be pressure treated, which is typically the kiss of death. If you pull a transom apart or you see a boat that's just completely full of electrolysis and it's got pinholes all through the transom, that's from using treated wood. I don't bother ever mentioning this because I assume people know at this day and age, but I continually watch videos of people using pressure treated wood in an aluminum boat. The copper additives in the pressure treated wood do not play well with aluminum and will literally eat right through it. Now, if that was pressure treated wood, the only saving grace is this layer of what looks like some sort of construction adhesive that was literally coating the whole transom. So that probably, if that was pressure treated wood, that's the only thing that saved this transom from being completely pitted and the aluminum being wasted right now, because a little bit of sanding on it and she cleaned right up. So this is going to get a transom put in it. The only issue with the boat is a tiny little tear right here. It only goes down about a half an inch. So I'll pop a hole in the end of there and we'll TIG weld that up. But the boat, otherwise, sans the paint job, is really in nice shape. There's no dings or divots and all. That's just paint flaking off. They painted it while on the trailer because you can see where they stopped. So attention to detail there. Kudos to them. I don't know if I'm going to keep this yet or if I'm just going to flip it and sell it. I don't know. Right now, we're going to put a transom in it. I'll do an update once I get that in. I just use BCX exterior. I coat it with fiberglass resin. I will prime and etch that aluminum. I'll give that a heavy coat of enamel to protect it. I weld up that little tear. I don't know if I'm going to put these little cubbies back in. If I do put them in, they're going to get a lid and become storage. The problem with that is they're really not big enough to put anything but maybe a battery and a life vest in. And it really kind of limits what you can do back here. I think I'm going to leave those out. Like I said, they really don't do anything. I'll probably leave those out. I'll probably throw at least a floor back here for batteries, gas can, the usual shit that goes in the back of a boat. I don't know. If I'm gonna keep this thing, I'll do a build on it. I just don't know. I don't know what configuration to do. We'll see. But anyway, that's my latest. It's my latest endeavor. And I'm curious to see what Frankenmotor does. I'll probably throw a transom in here, get it cleaned up, make sure everything's watertight, and then we're going to throw a Frankenmotor on here and give her a rip. See what this thing does. Might be awesome, or might spend 2 hours paddling back to the dock. We'll see. All right, that's it. Later.